If you're wondering what kind of rebel dresses like this is a 19th century rebel. See, Rosia Foss, she grew up in an Ashkenazi orphanage right on the other side of the Snocha. And, the guys who ran this orphanage, they were trying to do the right thing by the girls. So they tried to teach them skills that they would be able to support themselves with. So Rosia learned lace and embroidery and fine linen work, and then she got out of the orphanage and they didn't pay her enough to support herself. Now this stuff, I don't know if you've seen 19th century fashion, but embroidery, lace, linen work, this was in high demand. People were paying top dollar to the sellers and to the workshop owners. And they in turn paid the women who actually made the goods a pittance. So it wasn't just Rosia, she's looking around and she's seeing all these women struggling and she has to do something. So she uses a fake name and she starts organizing the women. As you may know, this is when the labor movement, we have Che taking doing drawings out there. This is when the labor movement is just starting to go and people are really freaked out. This is also when fairs are really popular, so Rosia's like going to these fairs, laying out a booth with this beautiful work and a little sign next to each one saying, here's how long this took to make, here's what the woman got paid for it. And she started to get attention from the sellers and the workshop owners. And she was blackballed. She couldn't get work, and eventually she had to leave Amsterdam. So she goes to the next city, and what do you guys think? Do you think in the next city she kept her head down and just tried to get by?
No.
Right? Of course not. She organized, and once again she got blackballed, and then she had to move again. Sometimes you just have to do what's right, even if it's scary, and even if you're taking a risk. Which, as you may know, is why we're here tonight. Does anyone know the story of Esther? Make some noise if you've... Thank you. Yes! Sorry. Thank you. Okay, so those of you who know the story know that this is not just me talking at you. You guys have to be, this is a shared storytelling event, right? Excellent. Please, please continue. But we start in ancient Persia with a king who is king in name only. Now, I'm a big history geek, and I can tell you there's two types of kings. One type gets really into ruling, and they throw themselves into it, whether it's, attacking other countries, raising taxes, God forbid, making their subjects' lives easier. This isn't that kind of king. This guy is like, I'm the most powerful person in the kingdom. I can get drunk and party while someone else does the work. And I think we all know people like this, right? Like people who shove off their responsibilities so they can party. Does anyone have any examples? Come on, I'm a history geek, so I think of Edward IV or Robert Baratheon, but I need a name for this guy. And if you guys don't give me a name, I'm just gonna call him Baratheon, and that's gonna be a long name. Any ideas? Shout it out. Who blows off their responsibility to drink? All right, we're calling him Baratheon. So, the king throws a massive party, like 7 days of eating and drinking and eating and drinking, and he's got people from all over his empire, which, by the way, goes from the Indus River to the Nile River, so there are so many people in this party. And he's got all the guys, and they're drinking and, doing what guys do when they're drinking alone. And meanwhile, his wife is having a party for the ladies. And his wife was gorgeous. And she knew it. So honestly, she was pretty rude to people because she knew her beauty would get her out of it. It makes me think of Kim Kardashian. Is there anyone else who that reminds you of? You think Kim Kardashian? What?
I said sure.
Oh, okay, cool. Any other examples, or are we going with Kim? Okay, so after Baratheon, the king, was good and drunk, after 7 days of this cycle, He decides he wants to invite his wife into the banquet because he wants everyone to know how hot his wife is. And so he sends a message, and Kim's like, no, I'm not coming. And there's a couple ideas, like maybe she didn't come because she thought it was inappropriate to be in front of drunk men. Maybe she just didn't want her holler ass across the compound. What do you guys think? Was it the drunk men or the hauling ass? She had a good time with the women. Yes, I like that better. Okay. She was having a good time with the women, so she said no. And of course, all these men with the king start whispering in his ear, saying, this make you look weak. Women across the empire will think they don't have to obey their husbands if the king can just be ignored by the queen. And the thing about a weak king is they're pretty easy manipulated. So the king threw his wife away. And he turned to the tool of weak men to this day. He turned to the beauty pageant. And he sent word for all the most beautiful women in the land to come join him. And he would decide who would be his queen. Now, in the city was this truly amazing man, just a good, honest, stand-up guy. He was the heart of his refugee community. See, the Jewish people were all mostly living in the Persian Empire because the Babylonian king had taken over the kingdom of Judah. So they were living as refugees. And you know how challenging that is. And Mordecai was just the beating heart of this community. For me, he reminds me of Beno Premsala. If you guys haven't, if you haven't heard of Beno Premsala, he is a Holocaust survivor who became the center of the gay community in the 20th century. And everyone I've met, whoever met Beno, has some story for me of him taking care of them, or him being kind, or him just letting them know that they were safe. And so that's what I think of when I think of Mordecai. Does anyone have any other examples, or shall we go with Beno? Oh, thank you. All right, we'll go with Beno. So Beno's raising his niece, Esther. And we're not renaming Esther because Esther is one of a kind. And he sends Esther to this beauty pageant. And Esther has been raised to be demure and quiet. So she goes into this interview. She's quiet. She doesn't tell anyone she's Jewish. And when the king asks her if he can give her anything, unlike every other contestant, she says no. Because Esther's smart, and Esther recognizes a trap when she sees one. So she says, no, I don't want anything. She's gorgeous. So of course the king marries her. Boom, Esther's the new queen. But the problem with weak kings is that plots begin to fester. And Beno found one of those plots. And he told Esther, and Esther told the king, and more importantly, the people around the king, and the king was saved. And he meant to reward Beno, but, things got busy. He wanted to go to this party, and he just sort of figured someone else would do it. The other problem, you can hear my accent, you can hear where I'm from, so you know that I know this. The problem with weak leaders is that evil men can get into power. And this is what happened here. Now, if you've got those rattlers, those noisemakers, the romelar, if you have those on your table, please grab them. Thank you, exactly. Thank you for practicing. Wait. So the reason those are there is because we're about to talk about someone so evil that we're not renaming him, we are gonna drown out his name. So every single time, I need you to boo, hiss, stomp, don't clap, make some noise, and drown out the name. And just so that you guys know, because unlike the normal reading, you're not actually gonna know when his name's coming up, I'm gonna make the sign of the devil, right? So when you see me make the sign of the devil, perfect. So, Haman, we'll drown him out next time. he became viceroy, and he wanted everyone to kneel when he walked by. And Benno said, I only kneel before God. And Haman was so proud and so narcissistic and so fucking evil that he was like, it is beneath me to try to take revenge on one person. No, I am going to destroy this man's entire people. So he waited until Baratheon got drunk, didn't have to wait too long, and once the king was drunk, he had the king give his seal. And Haman, he sent a message to every single province, appointing a day when everyone should attack every Jewish person in their province. And of course, news like this gets out, and across, and remember, this is a massive empire, again, Indus River to Nile River. And in all these Jewish communities, people are tearing their clothes, they're mourning, they're grieving, they're panicking. And Benno goes to Esther, and he begs her to talk to the king. And Esther reminds him, I haven't been called into the king's presence, and it is death to enter the king's presence without permission. But you guys fast and pray for 3 days. I'll do the same, and then I'll go. Now I want you to imagine this woman who has only been raised to be quiet and demure and be protected. How long did she stand outside that door trying to get the courage to walk into the room? And she opened the door, and the room goes silent. Not like that. The room goes silent. And as she walks with her eyes down, everyone instinctively turns to the king. What is he going to do? Is he going to kill her himself? Is he going to send her to a guard? He's not going to let her speak, is he? No. Well, what kind of mood is he in? And as they're having these whispered conversations, Esther just slowly walks and prostrates herself before the king. And the king looks at this tiny woman kneeling before him, and he picks up his spear. Haman leans forward with bloodlust in his eyes. He wants to see another queen fall. And the king takes his spear and he extends it to Esther in a sign that she can speak. And Esther said, my king, I want you and Haman to come to a banquet that I've prepared. And everyone in the room was like, what? This woman just risked death to ask her husband to dinner? Is she insane? What? But the king and his viceroy went. And after the king was full, had all this food in his belly, had some wine, and is kind of like leaning back, like life is good, Esther throws herself to her knees and begs for her life. The king is baffled and is like, what do you mean? And she says, my people and I have been sold into slavery and passed over into violence. There is someone in the heart of your kingdom plotting against you. He cares so little for you that he has already built a gallows on which to hang the man who saved your life. And the king stands up and flies into a rage, and he says, who would do this? And Esther is smart, so she keeps the triumph out of her voice as she points to Haman. That's what the king said. He hung him on the very gallows that the viceroy had built for Benno. And then he turned to Esther in despair and he said, that order went out with my seal. I can't take it back. There's no way to rescind the king's seal. And like I said, Esther was smart. So she was like, Why don't you send another message to all the provinces saying that Jewish people are allowed to fight back? On the day that was appointed, they are allowed to gather and to fight to defend themselves. And just in case any of the governors couldn't read between the lines, he appoints Benno as his new viceroy. On the appointed day, those who did attack the Jewish communities in Persia were slaughtered, including the sons of Haman. Benno went on to be an incredibly powerful viceroy, and the day that was appointed for the destruction of the Jews became a celebration that we're observing tonight. Yeah, right? You know, Esther literally risked her life to save her people, and that seems like something so big, but it seems like something so far away from us. Even when you see someone like the man standing in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square, or Aisha Davis, the woman in the green dress facing down riot police during one of the many protests after the death of a black man at the hands of the US cops. When you see pictures like that, it still seems like Esther. It seems like this is not something I could do. This is something that's far from me. But there are streets all over the Netherlands named after Rosia Vos. She knew what she was risking, and she risked her livelihood again and again and again to save her community. So tonight, let's celebrate the rebels and icons, including those in the Judy Chicago exhibit. And I have to tell you guys, because I was supposed to say at the beginning, I have to tell you guys, there's tours of the Judy Chicago exhibit every 30 minutes, and you guys have to go, they're amazing. But tonight, let's celebrate the rebels and icons, and tomorrow, let's figure out what we can do for our own communities. Thank you for celebrating with me. My name's Elizabeth. I'm from Badass Tours.